the story of the fellow that needed a heart transplant, and the doctors told him that they actually had two hearts available, and they're going to give him his choice. One of them was from a 26-year-old marathon runner, and the other was from a 66-year-old retired IRS agent. He chose the 66-year-old IRS agent's heart because he figured it had never been used. Oof. How many of you love to pay your taxes? Raise your hand. Oh, come on. How many of you love paying taxes? Raise your hand. Nobody. How many of you think your tax rate is fair? How many of you would give a little bit more if the government asked? Wow. I may have to do a sermon on give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Nah, that's another day. Well, we have an interesting story from the Bible today, and it kind of hits home for a lot of us, I hope. I know I received something in the mail from the Internal Revenue Service about a month ago. I'm self-employed and make quarterly tax payments. And I forgot to make one of them. And so they sent me a bill. That's fair. You know, you're supposed to make your quarterly payments. I forgot one. There it is. Here's how much you owe. Nice little $1,600 and some for that quarterly payment. And then right below it said, here's the penalty. Another $1,800. I thought, No, actually I just sat down and figured, well, that's fair. I forgot. I'll write him a big check. Nope, I got on the phone and practiced my skills in negotiation. That's another story. I want to read something here, an encounter that Jesus had. As soon as you hear this man's name, you're going to right away just stop listening probably and drop back into that time when you were a little child and sing that wonderful little song, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, How many of you sang that song? Beth, you don't remember that? Okay, raise your hand. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he.
Climbed up in the sycamore tree to see what he could see. Passed up way, looked up in the tree, he said, Zacchaeus, you come down. I'm going to your house today. I'm going to your house today.
We need an applause for a good baritone. All right. Wow. Yeah. It's a great story. Where do I go now? Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. Now, the average height for a man back there was somewhere around 5'2". So you can imagine how short Zacchaeus must have been. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, he's gone to be a guest of the one who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much. Then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house because this man is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost. Great story, isn't it? I like that. He was a tax collector, and and he was rich. Now that's no coincidence. The two are really connected. Being a tax collector and being rich. Here's how it worked. Israel did not have control over their own country at this time. They had been overrun by the Romans. And they had to answer to the Roman government. The Romans controlled, of course, the Roman Empire, which was all of the civilized areas of Europe and northern Africa and up through the connecting part, which we call Israel. They controlled it all. You got to have money to control that, to pay for the troops, to station the army, to keep commerce going, for all the building programs you've got. You got to have money for all of the waste that takes place in government. Now, we're not associated with that in our country. We don't have any idea what waste is. Do we? Yeah. Okay, I think we do. They needed money. So, how do we get it? We get it through taxes. Wow. They had a really cool system. How many of you really appreciate our system of taxation through the IRS? Don't raise your hand. Don't want to see it. You think our system is interesting? They had a great system. The Roman government in Israel basically appointed tax collectors. Now it's interesting who they appointed. They didn't send Romans into the country as tax collectors. If you're going to collect taxes from people, you use their own people to collect those taxes. So they would appoint different Jews from the community to be the tax collectors. Now, it may be such as, they might say to Ted here, Ted, we're going to give you a job, we're going to appoint you tax collector. Okay? And Ted's going to go, ooh, everybody's going to hate me, but I can make a lot of money doing this. What are you going to pay me? And the Roman government would say, we're not going to give you a salary. We're not going to give you an hourly wage. We're not going to give you a bonus. Here's how it works. Here's how much money we want from your district. And you give them a figure. Anything over and above that you collect is yours. Talk about a commission cushion. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Of course, you know, the tax collector would take the job and think to himself, well, I only need a minimal amount to live on, right? No. This is incentive to really make some bucks. So what's going to happen is they may come and knock on Jeff's door. And they say, taxes are due this year, Jeff. And Jeff, first of all, is going to be upset that one of his own countrymen is collecting taxes from another countryman to give to Rome, who has invaded and taken over our country. That's not sitting well with Jeff. But there's nothing Jeff can do about it, because if he doesn't pay the taxes, the Romans are going to do what? They're going to toss him in the Crowbar Hotel, where he can live on milk and mush for a while. So Jeff would say, how much are my taxes? And the tax collector would look around at what he does for a living, and he would just make up an amount. He would figure, well, if I get $2,000 out of this guy this year, that'll put me on track to help keep Rome happy. But I'm going to charge him $5,000, because I need a little money too. Sound fair? Would you like to have that kind of job? How popular would you be in the community? How popular would you be in New Hudson or South Lyon or Brighton or wherever it is you live? If you were the tax collector and you could go around and charge what you wanted and keep the rest. And if anybody objected, you just reported it to the government, and they were made an example of, so that the next house he went to, which might be Chuck's over there, Chuck's going to be thinking, well, I know what they did to Jeff. Okay, I'll have to write a check even if we have to go without. It was a crooked system, wasn't it? Your own people turning on you to get rich. Wow. Zacchaeus, an interesting man. Zacchaeus was not simply a tax collector. He had a better job. He was chief tax collector. Wow. That's like telling Bill, Bill, you get a piece of the action of all those tax collectors out there. And if you're not happy with how much of the cut you're getting, you can take it out of the tax collectors. They can lose their jobs. Great system, isn't it? Well, that's what was happening. Which means that Zacchaeus probably was not a very popular man. Without a doubt, he was not a popular man at all. He was an interesting man. He was a different kind of man. He was a social pariah with a huge bank account and a crooked job. We call them politicians today? I don't know. Anyway, he was not a liked man. And he was a very small man, the Bible says. Anybody ever hear of something called little man syndrome? Ever hear that? Now, I'm not saying that all small men or all short men have little man syndrome. That's not the case. But there is something in the psychological arena called little man syndrome. And that is when a man is really small, they feel like they have to assert their manliness by getting in your face. Or, you know, an example of that would be Steinbeck's great book of Mice and Men. Anybody ever read that? Have you ever seen the movie? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Of Mice and Men, where the little guy who owned the ranch with his father hated big guys. And he'd pick on them. And he'd make their lives miserable. If ever there was a guy suffering from little man syndrome, you can probably make the case it was Zacchaeus. He was going to take it out on everybody who ever picked on him when he was young. He's got this cushy job of power. And what happens when you give some people power? They're gonna give it up? Nope. Are they going to hold it in check? Not usually. Are they going to use it to their advantage? Yeah. Would we ever do that? No. Not us. Well, there he is. In the community of Jericho. Oldest city around, probably. And he is head of the tax collectors. And there's a big ruckus because this guy named Jesus is coming to town. A lot of people say he's the Messiah. A lot of people don't believe it. A lot of people wonder if it's true. So everybody comes out to check him out, to see what this guy is really all about. And the crowds are really thick. You ever been in a huge crowd? You ever been in one of those crowds where when it moves, you move with it, even if you don't want to? Happened to me with 112,000 people at U of M Stadium a few weeks ago. It's almost scary. I wanted to go there. I ended up there. Huge crowd pushing in to see Jesus, to hear Jesus, figure out what's going on. And here comes Zacchaeus, the social outcast. Nobody in that community would want to give him the time of day. As a matter of fact, the religious people of the community wouldn't want to even look at him. They would consider themselves unclean if they even accidentally brushed up against him because he's breaking the laws of Moses. You do not financially abuse someone else. As a matter of fact, you are told that you charge only a fair price for what it is that you should be receiving, and that you should never even charge interest on a loan to someone else. Oh, the good old days. And Zacchaeus was doing all the opposite. So he would have been one that they wouldn't even want to be around. Wouldn't want to even speak his name. And he's a little guy. And he can't even see over the shoulders of everybody else. and he's trying to work his way through the crowd, and he can't. So what does he do? The Bible says there's a sycamore tree there, and he climbs that tree. Isn't climbing that tree sort of an admission that you're just a little person? Isn't it sort of an admission that out of desperation I need to do something different? Isn't it an admission that the way I've been living my life, something's wrong somewhere? Isn't it an admission that what I've been doing, what I've been believing, what I have not been believing is being shaken, and I need to see if it's true, see what this guy is like, see who he is? It's an indication that something's missing. He climbs the tree to get a good look. That's how it is with Jesus. Christ pursues us, but there's something about us that needs to pursue back. When Christ pursues us, there's something about us that needs to say, I have to find out if this is real or not. Doesn't matter what I've been taught, doesn't matter how I've been raised, doesn't matter what I've done with my life. There comes a time in our lives when we realize that we are going to encounter Christ, whether we like it or not, and we're going to have to respond. Zacchaeus is doing that, isn't he? He's up in that tree. And everybody's kind of looking up and going, oh, jeez. Him, what's he going to do? He's going to tax Jesus now for speaking? What, you got a public arena tax here or something? Or, look at this guy. Look at this hypocrite. He wants to be seen by Jesus. Talk about a hypocrite. He's been ripping us off. He's breaking the laws of Moses. He's helping out those Romans who have overrun us. He is the lowest person on the totem pole in our society, even though he's one of the richest. Who does he think he's kidding? Up there in that tree, trying to be noticed. Trying to see Jesus like he's somebody holy. And it's kind of an interesting story, isn't it? Because of all the people gathered there, all of the faithful gathered there, all of those who've been waiting for the Messiah, hoping for the Messiah, all of those who are hoping that maybe this is really true, all of those standing there in their unbelief wanting to know, is there something to believe in? They're all there for good reasons, and you would think Jesus would approach one of them. Instead, he looks up and he says, hey, Zacchaeus, come into your house tonight. Wow. Now, we can jump to a couple conclusions there. We can say, yeah, supposed to be the Messiah, and there he goes. There he goes, wanting to rub elbows with the rich people. No, that wasn't it. Some people would say, if he's the Messiah, what's he doing hanging around with a dirt bag? What's he doing hanging around with that guy? If he's the Messiah, he's supposed to be holy. They got it wrong too. If Jesus, I've said this many times, if Jesus were to come back on earth today to stir things up, do you think he'd be sitting in here on Sunday morning? Or would he be down at the local bar? Got to ask yourself that question, don't you? In this case, he says to Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house. And Zacchaeus sees something in Jesus that he's never seen in anyone else during the course of his life. He sees something that he can't even explain. But he sees something that awakens the spark of God that lives within each and every one of us. He sees something that no amount of money can give him. An encounter with God. And I like his response. Good response, isn't it? He says, Lord, I know who you are. And I can't live like this. And I am going to give back everything that I ever overcharged. Folks, that's got to be a lot of money. This guy had to have a lot of shekels in his bank account. I'm going to give it back. And if I've cheated anybody, oh, come on. Well, you got to give Zacchaeus a little room to be a little humble, I guess. If I cheated anybody, I'll pay it back. No, I'll double it. No, I won't. I'll give back 4 times as much as I've taken from them in my abusive ways. Not only am I going to give myself to you, Lord, but I'm going to make up for how I've abused those in my own community. And what does Jesus say? You're one of us, Zacchaeus. You're a son of Abraham. What is it Zacchaeus encountered that day? We all have values in life, don't we? You know, we always say to some people, well, that person, they just don't have any values because they live a bad life or whatever. They don't have any values. Yes, everybody has values. It's just that some of them are cruddy. Some of those values. What did he encounter? He encountered something that he knew deep down was missing in his life. He encountered something that even money couldn't assuage. He encountered something that power and authority couldn't fulfill. He encountered God. Isn't it interesting that in this story, Jesus didn't sit down with Zacchaeus and say, here are the scriptures, read those, and you'll see who I am, and you'll know there's a God. He didn't say that, did he? Because Zacchaeus had probably already read all of that. He had probably, like any other Jew, received all of that training and all that teaching. Didn't get through to him. He didn't say, here are the correct beliefs, and have a long theological, philosophical discussion with Zacchaeus. Nope. Didn't have any kind of discussion with him. He looked at Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus looked at him, and had an encounter of God. The experience of God, the experience of Christ is subjective. It's inward. You can deny it, you can't run from it. You can say it doesn't exist, but someday it's going to encounter you. And you'll need to respond. Zacchaeus could have climbed, he could have looked into the eyes of Jesus, he could have been shaken to his very core, he could have realized this is the Son of God, the Messiah, and he could have climbed down the tree and ran and lived his life the way he'd been living it. But something drew him to God. And it changed him forever. It radically changed how he felt, how he thought. We have a word for that, don't we? When someone encounters Christ and they're no longer the same person. It's called repentance. Repentance means change the way you think. And Zacchaeus changed the way he thought, the way he lived, the way he acted, who he was. We're not rich like Zacchaeus. He said, I don't think any of you are. We don't purposely go around ripping people off. He said, I don't think any of you do. But we all, at some level, lead some kind of a selfish life, don't we? And the teachings of Christ say you need to change the way you think. Because someday I'm going to stand in front of you, and you're going to have to respond. I will show you God. What are you going to do? Climb down from the tree and just go home? Or become a child of God? We'll pray. I think we have all the answers, oh God. We don't. Forgive us when we believe that we do. We want to live holy lives, but we want to take care of ourselves, often to excess. We want to talk, oh God, about helping others, but we know we pull back and leave that responsibility to someone else. We practice such deep self-deception, oh God, because we think we can have the answers that bring contentment. Forgive us. Help us to be brave enough to taste and see that you are real. Help us to recognize it when you step into our lives. For whether we admit it or not, we know, oh God, you're there somewhere. Through Christ our Lord we pray. Amen.